Decoding Digital Trust, a comprehensive guide to OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect. Welcome to the trust economy. Cast your mind back, if you can, to the Wild West days of computing, before smartphones ruled our lives and a vast network of online services connected every facet of our existence. In those early days, interacting with the internet was a simpler, yet often more cumbersome affair. Every new website, every online store, every forum demanded you create a brand new account with a fresh username and, of course, a unique password. The result? A digital jungle of login credentials. For many, it led to a chaotic mess of sticky notes plastered around monitors, or, much more dangerously, the perilous practice of reusing the same handful of passwords across dozens, if not hundreds, of online services. While convenient for the user, who could ever remember 100 unique, complex passwords, this practice was a gaping security hole. A single breach at one obscure forum could instantly compromise your email, your banking, and your social media accounts. This was password fatigue, security vulnerability, and user inconvenience all rolled into one. As our digital lives expanded, from checking email and reading news to managing finances, sharing photos, and consuming endless entertainment, this traditional model became unsustainable. Imagine needing a new house key for every friend who visited, for the delivery person, for the dog walker, and for anyone else who needed temporary access. And then, imagine having to give them your actual house key every time, trusting them to give it back and not make copies. It sounds absurd, but for a long time, this was how much of our digital world operated. The core problem was, and still is, trust at scale. How do you grant an application permission to access your online data without giving it the keys to your entire digital kingdom? How can you prove who you are to a new service without repeating the cumbersome login process you just completed elsewhere? This critical dilemma fueled the need for a profound shift in how we handle digital identity and access. The internet needed a more sophisticated bouncer at the door, a more secure way to carry and present credentials, and a universally understood protocol for telling one service that another service has permission to act on your behalf. This is where the concepts of delegated access and identity verification became paramount. Instead of handing over your master password, wouldn't it be better to provide a temporary, specific permission slip, a digital equivalent of giving a trusted friend permission to pick up your mail at the post office without giving them the keys to your home? That permission slip would be limited in scope, tied only to the mail, and could be revoked at any time. This book will guide you through the groundbreaking protocols that fundamentally changed how we manage our online lives. OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect. These aren't just technical terms reserved for software engineers. They are the silent architects operating behind the scenes, making your daily interactions with beloved online services secure, seamless, and sensible. Think of it this way: you have a digital keyring filled with very important master keys to your most valuable online services: your email, your social media, your cloud storage. OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect allow you to grant an application temporary, specific, and revocable access to one small part of one of those services without ever sharing your master key. It's like being able to issue a special-purpose, single-use access card to a guest, rather than handing them your entire set of house keys. Over the next chapters, we will demystify these powerful protocols. We'll explore the fundamental difference between knowing who you are, authentication, and knowing what you're allowed to do, authorization, and why this distinction is crucial. How OAuth 2.0 works, enabling applications to gain your permission without ever seeing your password. We'll break down its core components and see it in action. The common ways applications acquire permission to act on your behalf, exploring the dance of delegation. The secret language of digital permissions. What are tokens and scopes, and how do they govern access to your digital resources? How OpenID Connect builds on OAuth 2.0, adding the critical layer of identity, allowing you to prove who you are securely and efficiently across different services, often with just one click. The vital security considerations and best practices that make these systems robust, and how major companies protect your data. Real-world examples that you encounter every day, from sign in with Google buttons to securing access to your banking information for third-party apps. And finally, we'll look to the future, exploring emerging trends in digital identity and how these protocols might evolve. By the end of this journey, you'll not only understand the bedrock of modern digital security, but also gain a deeper appreciation for the intricate ballet that unfolds every time you log in, connect, or share online. Welcome to the trust economy. Let's unlock its secrets. The digital gatekeepers, authentication, authorization, and the problems they solve. Before we dive into the specifics of OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect, it's crucial to understand the fundamental concepts they address. These protocols are digital gatekeepers, controlling who can enter and what they can do once inside. Their job is to answer two distinct, yet interconnected, questions. Who are you? What are you allowed to do? In the world of digital security, these questions correspond to authentication and authorization. While often confused, distinguishing between them is the bedrock of understanding modern security systems. Imagine arriving at an exclusive members-only club. To get past the velvet rope, a bouncer checks your ID. They're confirming your identity. Who are you? This is authentication. Once inside, depending on the type of membership you have, you might be granted access to the VIP lounge, the pool, or perhaps just the main bar. The wristband or special card you receive, indicating your access level, determines what you're allowed to do. This is authorization. You can be authenticated. The bouncer knows you are indeed Sarah, according to your ID, but not authorized. Sarah's membership only allows access to the main bar, not the VIP lounge. Conversely, you can't be authorized for something without first being authenticated. You can't get a VIP wristband if you haven't shown your ID to prove you're a member. Let's explore these two critical concepts in more detail within the digital realm. Authentication, proving your identity. Authentication is the process of verifying your identity. It's how a system confirms that you are who you claim to be. The most common form of authentication we encounter daily is the username and password. You type in credentials, and the system matches them against its records. If they match, you're authenticated. However, passwords alone are increasingly inadequate. Cybercriminals constantly devise new ways to steal, guess, or trick users into revealing their login details. This led to the rise of more robust authentication methods, multi-factor authentication, MFA. This adds extra layers of security beyond just your password. After entering your password, you might be asked for a code sent to your phone, a fingerprint scan, or a confirmation through an authenticator app. This confirms something you know, your password, plus something you have, your phone, or something you are, your fingerprint. Biometrics. Using unique biological characteristics like fingerprints, facial recognition, or iris scans to verify identity. Even with these advancements, the fundamental challenge remains. If every single application and website requires you to create and manage a separate identity, the burden on users and the security risks associated with widespread credential theft are immense. This led to the desire for a simpler, more centralized way to authenticate once and then leverage that verified identity across multiple services. Think of services like Sign In with Google or Login with Facebook, which promise a single, convenient entry point to dozens of other applications. But how do they work without giving Facebook or Google your password to those other services? We'll get to that. Authorization, granting permissions. Once you're authenticated, the system knows who you are. Now it needs to decide what you're permitted to do. This is authorization. It's about access control, letting you view your personal profile but not someone else's, allowing you to post a photo but not delete another user's album, giving a third-party app permission to read your emails but not to send them. The problem with the old ways, as we discussed in Chapter 1, was that authorization often meant an all-or-nothing proposition. If you wanted to use a photo printing service that connected to your cloud storage, you'd often have to give that service your entire cloud storage username and password. This effectively granted them unlimited access to everything in your cloud storage, far beyond just the photos you wanted to print. It was like handing over your house keys to allow someone to water your plants. They could technically walk away with your TV. This broad, undifferentiated access posed significant security risks. Overpermissioning. Applications receiving more access than they actually need, widening potential attack surfaces if the app is compromised. Lack of control. Once you've given away your credentials, you have no easy way to revoke specific permissions without changing your password for the main service, which then breaks access for all other legitimate applications. Exposure of primary credentials. Your most sensitive login details are shared with numerous third parties, any one of which could have a security flaw. The inefficiency and danger of the old ways. The inherent inefficiency and dangers of sharing primary credentials highlight the urgent need for a better model. Consider the example of a gaming app that promises to integrate with your social media profile to find friends. The old way, the app asks for your social media username and password directly. User burden. You have to remember and type your social media credentials into yet another app. Security risk. Now the gaming app has your most sensitive social media login. If that gaming app is ever compromised, or if it's malicious, your entire social media account is vulnerable. It could post on your behalf, read your private messages, or steal your identity, and you might not even realize it until it's too late. Lack of granularity. You might only want the app to see your friend list, but by handing over your password, you've given it the equivalent of full administrative access. There's no way to say, just view my friends, nothing else. This scenario clearly demonstrates a critical problem: the need for a standardized, secure method of delegation. We need a way for one digital service to say to another, I have permission to do this specific thing on behalf of user X, and I can prove user X approved it, without user X ever giving me their master password. Introducing the architecture of trust, conceptual. This is precisely the problem that OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect were designed to solve. They usher in an architecture of trust where you authenticate with a single, trusted identity provider like Google or Apple, which securely stores your primary credentials. When a third-party application wants to access your data on that trusted provider, e.g., your photos on Google Photos or your contacts in Apple, it doesn't ask for your password. Instead, it redirects you to the trusted provider, where you log in directly to them. The trusted provider then asks you, clearly and explicitly, do you grant this specific application permission to do this specific thing, e.g., view your photos? If you consent, the trusted provider issues a special permission slip, or access token, to the application. This token is temporary, specific to the requested action, and doesn't reveal your password. The application can then use this permission slip to access only the data you allowed and nothing more. This model not only enhances security by isolating your primary credentials, but also vastly improves the user experience by reducing login friction and offering transparent control over your data. It's a profound shift from a fragmented, insecure landscape to a more robust, interconnected, and user-centric trust economy. In the next chapter, we'll dive into how OAuth 2.0 specifically enables this powerful concept of delegated authorization. Key takeaways. Authentication confirms who you are, e.g., username password, MFA. Authorization determines what you're allowed to do once authenticated, e.g., view profile post-FOD. The old way of sharing primary login credentials was insecure and lacked granular control. There's a critical need for a system that allows delegated access, granting specific permissions to applications without sharing master passwords. OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect are the protocols that provide this standardized, secure framework for managing digital identity and access. Enter OAuth 2.0, the authorization enabler. In the previous chapter, we dissected the critical difference between authentication, who you are, and authorization, what you can do. We also highlighted the inherent dangers of the old ways of granting access, particularly the perils of sharing your primary login credentials with every third-party application. This brings us to the hero of our story's first act, OAuth 2.0. OAuth 2.0 is not an authentication protocol. Let's be clear about this from the outset, as it's one of the most common misconceptions. OAuth 2.0 does not concern itself with who you are. Instead, it focuses entirely on authorization, answering the question, is this application allowed to access this specific resource on behalf of this user? It's a framework for delegated access. Think of it this way: OAuth 2.0 handles the permission slips. It never sees your ID card. To truly grasp OAuth 2.0, let's revisit our analogy from Chapter 2 and expand it into a detailed scenario: the valet parking service. This analogy will be our trusted companion throughout the core explanations of OAuth 2.0 because it elegantly mirrors the core components and flow without getting bogged down in complex technical jargon. The valet parking service, a seamless analogy for OAuth 2.0. Imagine you're arriving at a grand, upscale hotel in your car, your valuable resource. You want the hotel's valet service to park your car safely in their secure garage and retrieve it when you're ready to leave. You absolutely do not, under any circumstances, want to hand over your house keys, your credit cards, or expose everything in your glove compartment to the valet. You just want them to park your car. Let's break down the cast of characters in this scenario, as they directly map to the core roles in OAuth 2.0. You, the resource owner. In the analogy, you are the car owner. You possess the valuable resource, your car, and have the ultimate authority over it. In OAuth 2.0, you are the end user, e.g., Jane Doe. You own the protected data or resources, e.g., photos on Google Photos, posts on Twitter, contact list on LinkedIn, and can grant or deny access to them. The valet or valet company, the client application. In the analogy, this is the valet who will actually park your car. They are a third-party service that needs to perform an action related to your valuable resource. In OAuth 2.0, this is the application that wants to access your protected resources. It could be a mobile app, a web application, or a desktop application. It wants to act on your behalf, for example, a photo printing app that wants to access your cloud photos, or a social media management tool that wants to post updates to your social profiles. The valet stand attendant, the authorization server. In the analogy, this is the trusted intermediary at the hotel entrance. You interact only with the attendant to delegate permission. They are responsible for two things: authenticating you, ensuring you are indeed the car owner. They might check your ID or reservation. Issuing a special ticket. Once you've confirmed your identity and consent, they issue a specific, limited-use ticket to the valet for your car. In OAuth 2.0, this is the server responsible for verifying your identity, authenticating you, and then, crucially, issuing access tokens to sanctioned client applications. It's the gatekeeper of permissions, acting on behalf of the resource owner. Examples include Google's authorization server, Facebook's authorization server, or your company's internal identity provider. The parking garage. The resource server. In the analogy, this is where your car and all other resources are securely stored. The attendants inside the garage, the resource server staff, don't know you directly. They only recognize the special parking tickets issued by the valet stand attendant. In OAuth 2.0, this is the server hosting the protected resources. It accepts and validates the access tokens issued by the authorization server and then grants or denies access to the requested resources based on that token. For example, Google Photos APIs, Twitter APIs, or your bank's secure API endpoints. The resource server doesn't care who you are. It only cares about the validity and permissions contained within the access token presented by the client. How the dance of delegation works, high level. Here's the basic idea of how these roles interact in the valet parking scenario, and thus in OAuth 2.0. You, the resource owner, arrive at the hotel with your car, your resource. You tell the valet, the client, "Please park my car." The valet says, "No problem, but first, you need to grant me permission through the hotel's trusted approval system." They then direct you to the valet stand attendant, the authorization server. You, the resource owner, go to the valet stand attendant, the authorization server. The attendant first verifies your identity, authenticates you, and then clearly asks you, "This valet wants to park your car. Do you consent to this specific action?" You see exactly what permission is being requested. If you consent, the attendant issues a special, single-purpose access ticket for your car to the valet. Crucially, you never gave your car keys to the valet. The valet only receives this secure, temporary ticket. The valet, the client, now takes this special access ticket to the security personnel at the entrance of the parking garage, the resource server. The parking garage security personnel, the resource server, inspect the ticket. If it's valid and grants the necessary permission, e.g., right to park this specific car, they allow the valet to perform the action. The valet parks your car, accesses your resource. The key takeaway is that you, the resource owner, never give your primary credentials, your car keys, directly to the client, the valet. You only interact with the trusted authorization server to express your consent. This keeps your sensitive credentials safe and allows you to grant very specific, limited permissions. Why OAuth 2.0 matters to you. Enhanced security. Your actual passwords are never shared with third-party applications. This significantly reduces the risk of your credentials being stolen or misused. Granular control. You decide precisely what permissions you grant. For instance, you can allow an app to read your social media feed but not to post on it. Better user experience. No more creating dozens of new accounts or remembering complex passwords for every service. You can leverage your existing identities with services like Google, Facebook, or Apple. Revocability. If you change your mind, or if an app's access is compromised, you can easily revoke its permission from the authorization server without changing your password for the main service. It's like telling the valet stand attendant to invalidate the valet's ticket. OAuth 2.0 enables a world where applications can collaborate and offer richer services without compromising the security or privacy of your core accounts. It's the behind-the-scenes magic that makes login with Google buttons possible and ensures your data is accessed responsibly. In the next chapter, we'll delve deeper into the specific dances or flows that applications use to obtain these crucial access tokens. Key takeaways. OAuth 2.0 is an authorization framework, not an authentication protocol. It does not prove who you are, but rather what an application is allowed to do on your behalf. Its core purpose is delegated access, granting limited, specific permissions to third-party applications without sharing your primary credentials. There are 4 main roles in OAuth 2.0: resource owner, the user you, client, the application requesting access, e.g., photo printing app, authorization server, the trusted entity that authenticates the user and issues access tokens, resource server, the server hosting the protected resources, e.g., Google Photos. The fundamental security benefit of OAuth 2.0 is that your passwords are never directly exposed to the applications seeking access to your data. The dance of delegation. OAuth 2.0 flows in action. In the previous chapter, we introduced the core roles of OAuth 2.0. The resource owner, you, the client, the app, the authorization server, the trusted permission issuer, and the resource server, where your data lives. We used the valet parking analogy to illustrate the high-level concept of delegated access. Now, it's time to delve into the actual choreography of how this delegation happens. In OAuth 2.0, these specific choreographies are called grant types or flows. They are predefined methods by which a client application can obtain an access token from the authorization server. Each flow is designed for a particular type of client application and security context. Choosing the right flow is critical for maintaining security. Think of it like different ways a valet might receive a parking ticket for your car. Sometimes you're right there to sign off on it. Other times, it's an automated process for a fleet car that doesn't need your direct input. We'll focus on the most common and secure flows you'll encounter in daily life and enterprise systems: the authorization code flow and the client credentials flow. We'll also introduce a crucial security enhancement for public clients called PKCE. The star of the show, the authorization code flow. The authorization code flow is the most common and recommended grant type for confidential clients like traditional web applications, as well as for public clients like mobile apps and single-page applications, SPAs, when combined with PKCE. It provides the best balance of security and flexibility. Let's walk through its steps, continuing our valet analogy. Preparation, client registration. Before anything else, the valet company, the client application, must register with the hotel's valet stand, the authorization server. During registration, the valet company provides its identity, a unique client ID, and sometimes a secret key, client secret. Crucially, they also tell the attendant exactly where to send you back if you approve their request. This is known as the redirect URI. This step ensures the authorization server knows and trusts the client. Request for permission, client redirects user. You, the resource owner, are using the valet app, the client, and you want it to, say, retrieve your car. The app sends you your web browser or mobile app directly to the hotel's valet stand, the authorization server. This redirect includes details like the client's ID, the requested permissions, or scopes, like read location for your car, and the specific redirect URI where you should be sent back. Authentication and consent, user interacts with authorization server. At the valet stand, the attendant, the authorization server, first verifies your identity. You log in directly to the authorization server, using your username and password, biometrics, or whatever authentication method they support. Once authenticated, the attendant shows you a clear screen outlining exactly what permissions the valet app is requesting, e.g., the Park My Car app wants to be able to park and retrieve your car. You then grant or deny this consent. The authorization code, authorization server redirects code to client. If you consent, the authorization server does not give the valet app the actual access token immediately. Instead, it gives back a temporary, single-use, very short-lived code called an authorization code. This code is typically sent back to your browser, which then immediately redirects it to the client's pre-registered redirect URI. It looks like a random string of characters. Secure exchange, client exchanges code for token. The valet app, the client, now has this authorization code. It then makes a direct, secure, server-to-server request to the authorization server. In this request, it sends the authorization code, its client ID, and for confidential clients, its client secret. This communication happens secretly, behind the scenes, away from your browser or mobile device, much like a discreet phone call between the valet and the attendant. Access token issued, authorization server issues token. The authorization server verifies all the information, the authorization code, the client ID, and the client secret. If everything matches, it finally issues the access token, and often a refresh token, which we'll discuss in the next chapter, to the client. This is the ultimate parking ticket that grants the valet permission to act. Accessing resources, client uses token at resource server. Now armed with the access token, the valet app, the client, can make requests to the parking garage, the resource server, on your behalf. For example, it can use the token to tell the garage to park your car. The resource server verifies the access token and, if valid, performs the requested action. Why is this flow so secure? The critical security feature is that the access token is never directly exposed to components that might be vulnerable, like a user's web browser. The authorization code is merely a temporary key that allows the client to initiate a secure, direct back-channel communication with the authorization server to get the real access token. This significantly reduces the risk of the access token being intercepted. The power of PKCE, proof key for code exchange. While the authorization code flow is robust, a vulnerability existed for public clients, like mobile apps or single-page applications, SPAs, that run entirely in a browser. These clients cannot securely store a client secret because their code is often publicly accessible or runs on a user's device. This meant that if someone intercepted the authorization code in Step 4, they could potentially exchange it for an access token. This is where PKCE, pronounced PIXI, comes to the rescue. PKCE is an extension to the authorization code flow designed specifically for public clients. It adds an extra layer of protection by making it impossible for an attacker who intercepts the authorization code to exchange it for an access token without also knowing a secret generated by the original client. Here's how PKCE conceptually enhances the flow. Before Step 2, the valet app, the client, randomly generates a secret code for each request, called a code verifier. It also creates a hashed or scrambled version of the secret, called a code challenge. Step 2, modified. When the valet app redirects you to the authorization server, it includes this code challenge in the request. Step 5, modified. When the Valet app makes the direct, secure server-to-server call to exchange the authorization code for an access token, it also includes the original code verifier. Verification. The authorization server receives the code verifier. It then independently scrambles this code verifier and compares the result to the codechalin it received in the initial request. Step 2. If they don't match, it means the authorization code was likely stolen and is being used by an unauthorized party. So the authorization server refuses to issue the access token. PKCE ensures that only the original client who initiated the authorization request can successfully complete the token exchange. It's like adding a special handshake to the process. Even if someone snatches the authorization code, they won't have the unique secret code verifier to complete the token exchange, making the stolen code useless. Machine-to-machine magic. The client credentials flow. Not all access requests involve a human user. Sometimes, an application needs to access its own resources directly from a resource server or act as itself without a particular user context. For example, a restaurant's inventory management system might need to access its own supplier's API to order more ingredients. There's no specific user involved in this interaction, just two machines talking to each other. This is where the client credentials flow comes in. It's designed for machine-to-machine communication, where the client itself is seeking access to protected resources. Here's a simplified version of its steps. Direct request. The valet company's central office system. The client directly contacts the hotel's central permit office, the authorization server. Authentication. The valet company's system identifies itself using its client ID and client secret, which it stores securely. Access token issued. The authorization server verifies these credentials. If valid, it issues an access token directly to the client. Resource access. The valet company's system then uses this access token to interact with the hotel's long-term parking database, the resource server, to check available spaces or log vehicle movements. This flow is straightforward because no user interaction or consent is required. The client is the resource owner, in a sense, or is acting on its own behalf. It's suitable for backend services, automated scripts, or internal applications. Other flows, briefly mentioned for context. While authorization code with PKCE and client credentials cover most modern use cases, you might encounter references to other flows. Implicit flow, used primarily for older spas. Less secure than authorization code with PKCE because access tokens are issued directly to the browser via a URL fragment, making them more susceptible to theft. Generally deprecated for new development. Resource owner password credentials flow allows the client to collect the user's username and password directly and exchange them for an access token. This completely defeats the purpose of OAuth by exposing the user's primary credentials to the client. Almost universally considered insecure and bad practice. Should only be used in very specific, highly trusted, first-party scenarios, e.g., perhaps an official application from the identity provider itself. But even then, it's generally discouraged. The landscape of OAuth 2.0 flows has evolved with security best practices. The authorization code flow, particularly when paired with PKCE for public clients, represents the most secure and recommended approach for delegated access involving a user. In the next chapter, we'll peel back another layer to understand what these access tokens actually are and how they allow applications to speak the language of access control. Key takeaways. Grant types flows are predefined methods for a client to obtain an access token from an authorization server. The authorization code flow is the most common and secure. It involves a redirect to the authorization server for user authentication and consent. An authorization code is returned, then securely exchanged for an access token in a direct, server-to-server communication. PKCE, proof key for code exchange, enhances authorization code flow for public clients, mobile apps, spas by preventing code interception attacks. The client credentials flow is used for machine-to-machine communication, where an application needs to access its own resources without a user's direct involvement. Other flows like implicit and resource owner password credentials are generally discouraged due to security vulnerabilities. Secure redirect URIs and the state parameter are critical security elements in authorization flows, preventing token redirection to malicious clients and guarding against cross-site request forgery attacks. Speaking tokens, the language of access control. By now, you understand the intricate dance applications perform to get permission to access your digital resources. But what exactly is the prize they're dancing for? What is it that the authorization server issues and the resource server demands before granting access? The answer is tokens. In the world of OAuth 2.0, tokens are the credentials applications used to access protected resources. They are the permission slips, or access passes, that prove an application has been granted specific authority on your behalf without ever touching your sensitive login details. There are two primary types of tokens crucial for OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect: access tokens and refresh tokens. We'll also briefly touch on the nature of bearer tokens and the concept of scopes. Access tokens, the bearer's burden. An access token is the primary credential issued by the authorization server that grants a client application permission to access specific protected resources on a resource server. Think of it as a temporary valet parking ticket for your car. What it represents. An access token is a string of characters, often a cryptographically signed JSON Web Token, or JWT, which we'll discuss more in the OpenID Connect chapter, that represents an application's authorization to access certain resources. It contains information like who it's for, which client application it was issued to, what it's for, the specific permissions, scopes it grants, how long it's valid, its expiration time. The bearer concept. Most access tokens are bearer tokens. This means that whoever possesses the token can use it. It's like cash or a public transit pass. If you have it, you can use it. This is why access tokens must be kept highly confidential by the client application. If an access token falls into the wrong hands, the attacker can use it to impersonate the client application and access your resources within the token's granted permissions. This is a critical security consideration, emphasizing why secure token storage and transmission are paramount. Lifespan, short and sweet. Access tokens typically have a relatively short lifespan, often ranging from a few minutes to an hour. Why so short? Because if a token is compromised, a shorter lifespan limits the window of opportunity for an attacker. It's like having a parking ticket that expires quickly. If it's stolen, it won't be valid for long. How clients use them. When the client application needs to access a protected resource on the resource server, e.g., retrieve your photos from Google Photos, it includes the access token in its request. The resource server then inspects the token, validates its authenticity and expiration, and checks if it grants the requested permissions. If all checks pass, the resource server grants access. The resource server never asks for your password or interacts with the authorization server for each request. It relies solely on the access token. Refresh tokens, getting a fresh pass. Since access tokens are short-lived, applications would constantly need to send users back to the authorization server to re-authenticate and get a new one. This would lead to a terrible user experience, defeating the purpose of seamless access. This is where refresh tokens come in. A refresh token is a special token issued by the authorization server, typically alongside an access token, but with a much longer lifespan: hours, days, weeks, or even never expiring until revoked. Its sole purpose is to allow the client application to obtain new access tokens without requiring the user to re-authenticate. Purpose. Imagine it as a long-term renewal card for your short-lived parking tickets. When your access token expires, the client application can use the refresh token to request a new access token from the authorization server. Workflow. The client receives an access token and a refresh token after the initial authorization flow. The client uses the access token to access resources until it expires. When the access token expires, the client sends the refresh token, and potentially its client ID and secret, to the authorization server's token endpoint. The authorization server validates the refresh token. If valid, it issues a new access token and sometimes a new refresh token as well. The client can now continue accessing resources without interrupting the user. Security of refresh tokens. Because refresh tokens have a longer lifespan and effectively act as a persistent key to get new access tokens, they are highly sensitive. They must be stored securely by the client application. If a refresh token is compromised, an attacker could potentially obtain new access tokens repeatedly and maintain unauthorized access to your resources. For web applications, they are often stored as secure, HTTP-only cookies. For mobile apps, they might be encrypted and stored in secure dedicated storage. Scopes, granular permissions. When an application requests access to your resources, it's not asking for a blank check. It specifies exactly what kind of access it needs using scopes. Scopes are strings that represent specific permissions or access rights. They allow you to grant granular control over your data. Examples of scopes: read photos. Allows the app to read your photos but not delete them or add new ones. Post updates. Allows the app to publish posts on your behalf but not read your private messages. User profile. Allows access to basic profile information like your name and email. Calendar read only. Allows access to your calendar events for reading purposes only. How they work. When the client application requests authorization, it includes a list of desired scopes in its request to the authorization server. The authorization server presents these scopes to you, the resource owner, on the consent screen. You see exactly what kinds of access the app is asking for. If you consent, the access token issued by the authorization server will be tied to those specific scopes. When the client uses the access token to access a resource server, the resource server checks if the token contains the necessary scopes for the requested action. For example, if an app with read photos scope tries to delete a photo, the resource server will deny the request. Scopes are essential for implementing the principle of least privilege, meaning an application should only be granted the minimum permissions necessary to perform its intended function. Token revocation, taking back the pass. What happens if you no longer trust an application, or if you suspect its access has been compromised? OAuth 2.0 provides mechanisms for token revocation. You can typically revoke an application's access from your settings within the authorization server's interface, e.g., Google account security settings, Facebook, apps and websites settings. When you revoke an application's access, the authorization server invalidates any access and refresh tokens it previously issued to that application for your account. This immediately cuts off the application's ability to access your resources, ensuring you maintain control over your digital identity. It's like telling the valet stand that the valet's ticket is no longer valid, even if they still have it. Tokens are the lifeblood of OAuth 2.0. They are the language of access control, enabling secure, delegated permissions without compromising your primary credentials. Understanding their purpose, lifespan, security considerations, and the roles of access tokens, refresh tokens, and scopes is fundamental to grasping the power and security of today's interconnected digital world. In the next chapter, we'll see how another protocol, OpenID Connect, builds directly on this token management system to add a crucial layer of identity. Key takeaways: tokens are the credentials applications used to access protected resources. Access tokens are short-lived, specific permissions slips that grant a client access to certain resources. They are bearer tokens, meaning whoever possesses them can use them, so they must be kept confidential. Refresh tokens are long-lived tokens used to obtain new access tokens without requiring the user to re-authenticate. They are highly sensitive and must be stored securely. Scopes define the specific granular permissions an application is requesting and is granted, e.g., read photos, post updates. Token revocation allows users to cut off an application's access at any time by invalidating its tokens. Beyond authorization, introducing OpenID Connect for identity. By now, you're well-versed in the elegance of OAuth 2.0. You understand that it's a powerful authorization framework, a masterful conductor of delegated access, ensuring that applications can perform specific actions on your behalf without ever demanding your core credentials. We've seen how access tokens grant granular permissions and how refresh tokens maintain seamless user experiences. But there's a crucial piece of the puzzle still missing: Remember our initial distinction: authentication, who are you? Authorization, what are you allowed to do? OAuth 2.0 beautifully handles authorization. It tells us if an app is allowed to, say, post a tweet on your behalf. But it doesn't intrinsically tell the app who you are. The access token is a permission slip, not an identity card. When an application receives an access token, it knows it can access some user's resources, but it doesn't necessarily know the username, email, or any other identifying information about that user. This might seem like a subtle difference, but it's significant. Imagine logging into a new online forum using your Login with Google button. The forum doesn't just want permission to access your Google Calendar. It wants to know your identity, your name, your email address, perhaps your profile picture, so it can create an account for you and personalize your experience. OAuth 2.0 alone can't provide this. The problem OAuth 2.0 didn't solve by design. Consider the Sign In with Google button. When you click it, after you authenticate with Google and explicitly grant permission, the third-party application receives an access token. Using that token, the app could theoretically make a request to Google's user profile API to fetch your identity information, like your email address. So, Google can provide identity information via its APIs. However, this approach has drawbacks. Standardization. There was no standardized way for apps to request and receive identity information. Every identity provider, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, might have a slightly different API endpoint or provide user data in a different format. This made it harder for developers to build applications that could work with multiple identity providers. Proof of identity. While getting basic profile info via an API call is useful, it doesn't offer a cryptographically verifiable proof that the user has genuinely authenticated with that specific identity provider. How could the relying application be absolutely certain that the user who performed the login was truly who they claimed to be, and that the identity data hadn't been tampered with? Developers wanted a universal, secure, and verifiable way to confirm a user's identity after they've logged in, without reinventing the wheel for every provider. They wanted something that felt like a digital passport or ID card. OpenID Connect, adding the identity layer. This is where OpenID Connect, OIDC, steps onto the stage. OpenID Connect is an identity layer built directly on top of the OAuth 2.0 framework. It uses OAuth 2.0 for user authentication and to obtain verifiable information about users. Think of it this way: OAuth 2.0 is the transportation system. It provides the secure pathways and mechanisms for moving digital permissions around. OpenID Connect is the passport control. It uses that transportation system to securely transport a user's digital passport or ID card, making it auditable and verifiable. When you use Login with Google or a similar service, you're almost certainly using OpenID Connect in the background. How OIDC builds on OAuth 2.0. OpenID Connect leverages the existing OAuth 2.0 authorization flows, primarily the authorization code flow, as discussed in Chapter 4, but extends them with specific additions for identity purposes. The OpenID scope. The most fundamental addition in OIDC is a special scope. OpenID. When a client application includes OpenID in its scope request, it signals to the authorization server, which in OIDC also acts as an identity provider, or IDP, that it wants to authenticate the user and receive an ID token. This is the key difference. Including this scope triggers the identity functionality. The ID token. Upon successful user authentication and consent, the authorization server, IDP, not only issues an access token for authorization, but also an ID token. This ID token is the digital identity card and is explicitly designed for the client application to verify the user's identity. We'll delve into the sophisticated structure of the ID token in the next chapter. Standardized endpoints. OIDC introduces standardized endpoints and discovery mechanisms. This means a developer can easily find out how to interact with different identity providers, Google, Microsoft, etc., using a consistent set of rules and locations, making it much easier to build applications that support multiple login with options. The power of login with buttons, single sign-on SSO. OpenID Connect is the protocol that makes the login with Google, sign in with Apple, and enterprise single sign-on SSO experiences possible and secure. When you click one of these buttons on a third-party website, you are redirected to a secure login page hosted by Google Apple, your company's identity provider. You log in there directly with the trusted provider. The provider then asks for your consent to share specific identity information, your name, email, and potentially grant specific permissions, access to your photos, with the third-party website. Once you consent, the provider issues an ID token for identity and often an access token for authorization back to the third-party website. The third-party website then uses the ID token to verify who you are and create or log you into an account. It can then use the access token to access other resources you've authorized, like your photos. This provides immense benefits. User convenience. Instead of creating a new username and password for every service, you can reuse your existing, trusted identity. Improved security. Your primary login credentials never leave the trusted identity provider. The third-party application only receives tokens, reducing the risk of your credentials being stolen. Reliable identity. The ID token provides cryptographically verifiable proof of who you are, making the process much more secure and trustworthy than simply fetching profile data via an API call. By building on OAuth 2.0's robust authorization framework, OpenID Connect has provided the missing piece: a standardized, secure, and verifiable way to assert a user's identity. It's the protocol that truly enables seamless, secure single sign-on experiences across the internet. In the next chapter, we will open up the ID token and explore its contents, understanding how it functions as your digital identity card. Key takeaways. OAuth 2.0 is for authorization, what you can do. It does not inherently prove who you are. OpenID Connect, OIDC, is an identity layer built on top of OAuth 2.0. It uses OAuth 2.0's mechanisms to perform authentication, who you are. OIDC makes login with Google, Facebook, Apple, buttons, and single sign-on SSO possible and secure. The key components that differentiate OIDC are the special OpenID scope in the authorization request, the issuance of an ID token, your digital identity card, in addition to the access token, standardized endpoints and discovery mechanisms for consistent interaction with different identity providers. OIDC provides a cryptographically verifiable way for applications to confirm a user's identity, enhancing security and trustworthiness. The identity card, ID tokens, and claims. In the last chapter, we uncovered how OpenID Connect, OIDC, sits atop OAuth 2.0, adding the crucial identity layer. The linchpin of this identity layer is the ID token. If OAuth 2.0 gives an application a permission slip to access your resources, then OpenID Connect gives it your digital identity card. This ID token isn't just a random string of characters. It's a meticulously structured and cryptographically signed data packet designed to securely convey information about the authenticated user. To understand the ID token, we first need to understand the format it uses. JSON Web Tokens, or JWTs. JSON Web Tokens, JWTs, the format of trust. A JSON Web Token, JWT, pronounced JOT, is a compact, URL-safe means of representing claims to be transferred between two parties. JWTs are often used for authentication and authorization because they are self-contained and can be digitally signed to ensure their authenticity and integrity. Think of a JWT as a digital, tampered-proof envelope containing specific, verifiable information, the claims. A JWT typically consists of three parts, separated by dots, encoded in a format called base64 URL-safe encoding. Header contains metadata about the token itself, such as the type of token, JWT, and the cryptographic algorithm used to sign it, e.g., HMAC SHA-256 or RSA. Payload. This is the heart of the JWT, containing the claims. Claims are pieces of information about the entity, typically the user and additional data. Signature. This is the cryptographic signature created by the issuer, usually the authorization server identity provider. It's calculated by taking the encoded header, the encoded payload, a secret key, and the specified algorithm. The signature is crucial for verifying the token's authenticity and ensuring that its contents haven't been tampered with. When a client application receives a JWT, it can decode the header and payload to read the claims. Then, it uses the public key provided by the issuer to verify the signature. If the signature is valid, the client can trust that the token was issued by the legitimate issuer and that its contents are authentic and haven't been altered. This self-contained nature means the client often doesn't need to make an extra call to the issuer to verify the user's identity. The ID token itself contains all the verifiable proof, claims, the facts about you. The payload of a JWT, especially an ID token, is where the claims reside. Claims are essentially key-value pairs representing attributes or assertions about the user. OIDC defines a set of standard claims that every ID token should or might contain, ensuring consistency across different identity providers. Here are some of the most important standard claims you'll find in an ID token. Issuer, identifies the entity that issued the ID token. This is typically the URL of the OpenID provider authorization server. The client must verify that this matches the expected issuer to prevent tokens from being issued by malicious third parties. Subject. This is the unique identifier of the end user, you, at the issuer. This value must never change for a given user at a given issuer. The client uses this to identify your account within its own system. For example, if you sign into a new app with Google, sub will be a unique string identifying your Google account to that app. Audience identifies the recipients that the JWT is intended for. This must contain the client's own unique identifier, its client ID. The client must verify that it is an intended audience for the ID token. If it doesn't match, the token is not for this client. Expiration time, the time after which the JWT must not be accepted for processing, identifies the expiration time on or after which the ID token must not be accepted. The client must check this to prevent replay attacks. Issued at, the time at which the JWT was issued, in Unix time. Auth time, authentication time, time when the authentication for this user occurred. This can be used to ensure an interaction hasn't gone on too long without re-authentication. Nonce, a cryptographically random string that the client includes in the authorization request. This nonce is then returned in the ID token. The client must verify that the nonce in the ID token matches the nonce it sent in the original request. This helps mitigate replay attacks, where an attacker tries to reuse a legitimate token. In addition to these core claims, OpenID Connect defines several optional claim sets that can be requested via specific scopes. Profile scope. If requested, the ID token may contain claims like name, given name, family name, middle name, nickname, preferred username, profile URL, picture URL, website URL, email verified, gender, birth date, zone info, locale, and update date. Email scope specifically requests email and email verified claims. Address scope requests address details. Phone scope requests phone number and phone number verified status. Client applications use these claims to identify the user via sub and display personalized information, e.g., welcome name, prefill user registration forms, e.g., email address, perform internal account linking or creation based on the unique sub-identifier. The user info endpoint. More details if you need them. While the ID token contains a concise set of claims for identity verification, a client application might need more extensive or less sensitive user profile information that isn't typically included in the ID token for security or efficiency reasons, like a long list of user preferences or less frequently accessed attributes. This is where the user info endpoint comes in. The user info endpoint is a protected resource on the identity provider authorization server that returns additional claims about the authenticated user. How it works. After a client successfully obtains an ID token and access token, it can use the access token to make a separate, authenticated request to the user info endpoint. The endpoint then returns a JSON object containing additional claims about the user, e.g., all the profile claims that might not have fit into the ID token itself, or other custom claims that the identity provider offers. Purpose: it allows for fetching more detailed user attributes on demand, reducing the size of the ID token and separating the immediate identity assertion from additional profile data. Verifying the ID token. Trust but verify. Crucially, the client application must always validate the ID token it receives. This isn't optional. It's a fundamental security requirement for any app that relies on OIDC for authentication. This verification process typically involves several critical steps. Signature verification. The client must verify the ID token's signature using the issuer's public key, retrieved from a standardized discovery endpoint. This confirms the token wasn't tampered with and was issued by the legitimate identity provider. Issuer validation, IS. The IS claim must match the expected issuer URL. Audience validation, AUD. The AUD claim must contain the client's own client ID. Expiration time validation, EXP. The EXP claim must indicate that the token is still valid. Nonce verification, nonce. For flows that require it, the nonce in the ID token must match the nonce originally sent by the client during the authorization request. This prevents replay attacks. Authentication time, auth. Optionally, the client can check the auth time to ensure the user hasn't been inactive too long based on its security policies. By performing these verifications, the client application gains cryptographic assurance that the user is genuinely authenticated, that the identity information is authentic, and that the token is intended for this specific client. The ID token, coupled with the rigorous verification process, is the backbone of secure, federated identity on the web. It's how sign-in with Google truly works, enabling millions of seamless and secure user experiences every day. It provides the digital passport that allows you to confidently use your identity across a vast array of online services. Key takeaways. The ID token is the digital identity card in OpenID Connect, securely conveying information about the authenticated user. ID tokens are formatted as JSON Web Tokens, JWTs, which consist of a header, payload claims, and a signature, ensuring they are self-contained and verifiable. Claims are key-value pairs in the JWTs payload that provide attributes about the user, e.g., IS for issuer, SUB for unique user identifier, AUD for audience, EXP for expiration time. Standard scopes like profile, email, address, and phone can be requested to include additional user attributes in the ID token or via the user info endpoint. Client applications must always validate the ID token's signature, issuer, audience, expiration time, and nonce to ensure its authenticity and integrity, which is critical for security. ID tokens enable secure and verifiable authentication, allowing applications to confidently confirm a user's identity without handling their primary login credentials. Securing the trust. Best practices, common threats, and mitigating risks. We've explored the fascinating architecture of OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect. From the initial dance of delegation to the secure exchange of tokens and the verifiable identity conveyed by ID tokens. These protocols are foundational to modern digital security, enabling convenient and secure interactions across countless services. However, no security system is foolproof, and even the most robust protocols can be undermined by improper implementation or an unsuspecting user. Understanding the potential pitfalls and adhering to best practices is paramount to truly securing the trust that these protocols aim to build. This chapter will highlight common attack vectors and the essential mitigation strategies for anyone developing, deploying, or simply using systems that rely on OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect. General security principles. Before diving into specifics, let's establish some overarching principles that apply to all cybersecurity efforts. Defense in depth. Employ multiple layers of security controls, so if one fails, others can still protect the system. Principle of least privilege. Grant only the minimum permissions necessary for an entity, user, or application to perform its function. Secure by design. build security into the system from the ground up rather than trying to patch it on later. Assume breach. Design your systems with the assumption that, at some point, a component might be compromised, and plan for detection and containment. Stay up to date. Security standards and best practices evolve. Regularly review and implement the latest recommendations from organizations like the IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force, the OpenID Foundation, and industry security groups. Common attack vectors and how to mitigate them. Attackers constantly look for weaknesses in the implementation of these protocols. Here are some prevalent threats and their countermeasures. 1. Redirect URI manipulation. The threat: if an attacker can trick the authorization server into sending the authorization code or ID token back to a URI they control, instead of the legitimate client's registered redirect URI, they can then intercept sensitive tokens. This often happens through cleverly crafted phishing links. Mitigation: strict redirect URI registration. The authorization server must enforce strict redirectory validation. Only allow pre-registered, exact redirectory matches, or at least highly specific patterns that prevent redirection to arbitrary domains. Never allow wildcard redirectories in production. HTTPS only. All redirectories must use HTTPS. This encrypts the communication channel, making it harder for attackers to intercept tokens. 2. Authorization code interception. The threat: while authorization codes are short-lived, if an attacker can intercept one, e.g., via a compromised browser, malicious proxy, or network sniffing, they could try to exchange it for an access token. This is particularly a concern for public clients, mobile apps, SPAs that cannot securely store client secrets. Mitigation: PKCE, proof key for code exchange. As discussed in Chapter 4, PKCE is the primary defense here. It links the authorization code to the client instance that initiated the request, making intercepted codes useless to an attacker on a different device. Always use PKCE for public clients. Short lifespan: authorization codes should have a very short lifespan, a few seconds to minutes, to limit the window of opportunity if intercepted. 3. Token leakage and compromise. The threat: access tokens and refresh tokens are valuable credentials. If they are exposed, an attacker can use them to gain unauthorized access to resources. This can happen through cross-site scripting, XSS. If a client application is vulnerable to XSS, an attacker could inject malicious scripts to steal tokens directly from the browser's memory or local storage. Insecure browser storage. Storing tokens in plain local storage or session storage in web browsers makes them vulnerable to XSS attacks. Logging. Insecure logging of tokens in application logs. Network sniffing. If HTTPS TLS is not used, tokens can be intercepted over the network. Mitigation: HTTPS TLS everywhere. All communication between client and auth server, client and resource server, and within the auth server resource server must use HTTPS TLS. This encrypts data in transit. Secure token storage. For web applications, browser-based, consider HTTP-only cookies for refresh tokens to prevent JavaScript access and thus XSS compromise. Access tokens are often handled in memory or by secure JavaScript libraries. For mobile applications, utilize the device's secure storage mechanisms, e.g., Android Keystore, iOS Keychain, to store refresh tokens and other sensitive credentials. Input validation and output encoding. Sanitize all user inputs and properly encode all output to prevent XSS and injection attacks. Content Security Policy, CSP. Implement CSP headers to restrict the sources from which a browser can load resources, limiting XSS impact. Avoid logging sensitive data. Never log access tokens, refresh tokens, or client secrets in insecure logs. 4. Cross-site request forgery, CSRF. The threat: an attacker can trick a logged-in user into unknowingly making a request to the authorization server, potentially disrupting the authorization flow or initiating an unwanted action. Mitigation: state parameter. The state parameter is a randomly generated, unguessable value passed by the client to the authorization server in the initial authorization request. The authorization server must return this exact state value back to the client. The client then verifies that the received state matches the one it sent. If they don't match, it indicates a potential CSRF attack, and the request should be aborted. State should be unique per request and securely stored by the client while waiting for the callback. 5. Client impersonation and credential compromise. The threat: an attacker obtains the client ID and client secret of a confidential client, allowing them to impersonate the legitimate client and obtain tokens. Mitigation: secure client secret management. Client secrets for confidential clients must be treated with the same care as passwords. They should be strong, rotated regularly, and never hard-coded in client-side code or publicly exposed repositories. Client authentication. The authorization server must rigorously authenticate confidential clients using their client ID and client secret before issuing tokens. 6. User impersonation/phishing. The threat: attackers create fake login pages that mimic legitimate identity providers, e.g., a fake login with Google Pay to trick users into entering their credentials. Mitigation: educate users. Inform users to always check the URL of the login page to ensure they are on the legitimate domain of the identity provider. Consistent user experience. Identity providers should maintain a familiar and consistent login experience to help users recognize legitimate pages. URL best practices. Developers should use standard, well-known URLs for redirection to the authorization server, making it obvious to the user where they are being sent. Best practices for each role. A. Authorization server/identity provider, IDP, best practices. Rigorously authenticate users. Implement strong authentication mechanisms, including MFA. Clear consent screens. Present users with clear, unambiguous consent screens that detail the permissions an application is requesting. Strict client validation. Only register legitimate clients. Enforce strong redirectory validation. Secure code and token management. Protect private keys, encrypt sensitive data at rest and in transit, and enforce short token lifespans, especially for access tokens. Implement discovery endpoint. Provide standardized OIDC discovery documents to help clients configure themselves correctly. Implement token revocation. Offer a robust mechanism for users to revoke previously granted access. B. Client application best practices. Use the right flow. Always choose the most secure grant type for your application type: authorization code with PKCE for public clients, authorization code for confidential web apps, client credentials for machine-to-machine. Validate all tokens. Do not trust access tokens or ID tokens without thorough validation of their signature, issuer, audience, expiration, and nonces. Secure token storage. Never store tokens insecurely. Follow platform-specific best practices, HTTP-only cookies, secure storage APIs. Request least privilege scopes. Only ask for the minimum permissions absolutely necessary for your application to function. Implement state parameter. Always generate and validate the state parameter in authorization requests to prevent CSRF. Protect client secrets. If you are a confidential client, keep your client secret truly secret. See resource server best practices. Validate access tokens. Before granting access to any resource, the resource server must validate the incoming access token. This typically involves checking the token's signature, if it's a JWT, against the authorization server's public key, ensuring the token is not expired, verifying the token's audience, that it's intended for this resource server, checking that the token has the necessary scopes for the requested action. Scope enforcement. Strictly enforce that the requested action aligns with the scopes present in the access token. Rate limiting and abuse detection. Implement measures to detect and prevent automated attacks or excessive requests. Security in the realm of OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect is a shared responsibility. The protocols provide the framework, but diligent implementation by developers and awareness by users are crucial to truly build and maintain digital trust. Staying informed about the latest best current practices, BCPS, from the IETF and OpenID Foundation is essential for anyone involved in this ecosystem. Key takeaways. No security system is foolproof. Understanding and mitigating risks is crucial for OAuth 2.0 OIDC. General principles: defense in depth, least privilege, secure by design, and continuous updates. Common threats and mitigations: redirect URI manipulation, strict redirectory validation, HTTPS only. Authorization code interception, PKCE, proof key for code exchange, is essential for public clients. Token leakage. HTTPS everywhere, secure token storage, e.g., HTTP-only cookies, secure device storage, XSS prevention. CSRF, always use and validate the state parameter. Client impersonation. Secure client secret management. User impersonation phishing, user education, consistent login experiences. Best practices for each role: authorization server. Strong user authentication, clear consent, strict client validation. Client application, use secure flows, auth code plus PKCE, validate all tokens, secure storage, request least privilege. Resource server, rigorously validate access tokens, enforce scopes. Security requires continuous vigilance and adherence to evolving best current practices. Real-world connections, case studies, and practical applications. Up to this point, we've explored the intricate mechanics of OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect, dissecting their roles, flows, and the tokens that power them. We've delved into why they are critical for securing digital trust and how various components dance together. Now, it's time to bring these concepts to life by examining how you encounter and benefit from these protocols every single day. You might not see OAuth 2.0 token pop up on your screen, but the convenience and security they provide are deeply woven into the fabric of modern online interaction. Let's look at some real-world case studies and practical applications. Case Study 1, sign in with Google, log in with Facebook, sign in with Apple. This is perhaps the most ubiquitous and recognizable application of OpenID Connect, built upon OAuth 2.0. How it works simplified. You encounter a new website or app and see the familiar Sign in with Google or similar button. You click it. The website, the client application, initiates an OpenID Connect flow, redirecting your browser to Google, the authorization server identity provider. You log into Google. If you're not already logged in, Google prompts you for your credentials. You're logging in directly to Google, not to the new website. This is Google authenticating you. You grant consent. Google presents a consent screen, clearly listing the permissions the new website is requesting, e.g., see your email address, see your profile information. This is you, the resource owner, authorizing the website. Google issues tokens. If you consent, Google sends an authorization code back to the new website via your browser. The website then exchanges this code for an ID token containing your verified identity, like your unique Google ID, name, and email, and typically an access token for potentially accessing other Google APIs you've authorized, like your calendar or photos. The website logs you in. The new website uses the ID token to verify who you are, create an account if you're new, or log you into an existing one. It trusts Google's ID token because it's cryptographically signed and issued by a trusted authority. Why it matters to you? Convenience. No need to create and remember a new username and password for every service. One login with a trusted provider opens doors to many others. Security. Your actual Google password is never shared with the third-party website. The website only receives tokens, mitigating the risk of your credentials being compromised by dozens of different services. Control. You can easily review and revoke access for any connected app directly from your Google or Facebook, Apple, etc. account settings. Case Study 2. Third-party applications accessing your cloud data. Consider using a photo printing service that wants to access your pictures directly from Google Photos or iCloud, or a document signing service that connects to your Dropbox account. How it works simplified. You start a process in the photo printing app that requires access to your cloud photos. The app redirects you to your cloud storage provider, e.g., Google, Apple, Dropbox, which acts as both the authorization server and resource server. You authenticate with your cloud provider and are presented with a consent screen. This screen details exactly what the photo printing app wants to do, e.g., view your photos, upload new photos to a specific album. You explicitly agree to these specific scopes. Tokens are exchanged. Your cloud provider issues an access token to the photo printing app, often alongside a refresh token. The app accesses specific resources. The photo printing app then uses this access token to make requests to the cloud provider's API to fetch only the photos you've allowed it to access. It cannot access your entire drive or other services. Periodic renewal. If the printing process takes a long time, the app might use its refresh token to get a fresh access token as needed, ensuring uninterrupted service without requiring you to relog in. Why it matters to you. Granular control. You grant access to specific data, your photos, for specific actions, viewing, printing, not your entire cloud storage. Security. Your cloud storage password remains secure with your cloud provider. The printing service only gets an access token, which is limited in scope and time. Revocability. If you stop using the service, or if you suspect a breach, you can easily revoke its access from your cloud provider's security settings. Case Study 3. Enterprise Single Sign-On (SSO) and API Access Management. Beyond consumer-facing applications, OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect are indispensable in the enterprise world. Employee SSO. Companies use OIDC, often alongside older protocols like SAML, to provide a seamless sign-on once, access everything experience for their employees. An employee logs into their company portal and then automatically gains access to internal applications like HR systems, expense reporting tools, or collaboration platforms without re-entering credentials for each one. The company's internal identity provider handles the authentication and issues ID tokens to each application, which then trusts that the user is verified. API security. Almost all modern application programming interfaces, APIs, are secured using OAuth 2.0. Whether it's a public API, like Twitter's or Stripe's, that third-party developers integrate with, or internal APIs that power an organization's microservices architecture, OAuth 2.0 access tokens are the gatekeepers. Machine-to-machine communication. Backend microservices often use the client credentials flow to securely communicate with each other, obtaining access tokens that grant them specific permissions to call other internal APIs without any user context. Delegated API access. When a mobile banking app accesses your account details from the bank servers, it's typically using an access token obtained via an OAuth 2.0 flow, often authorization code with PKCE. The bank's API, the resource server, validates this token before returning your sensitive financial data. Why it matters to you as an employee or consumer engaging with businesses. Productivity. Seamless access to multiple work applications saves time and reduces frustration. Enhanced security. Centralized identity management means better enforcement of security policies, like strong passwords and MFA, and easier revocation of access for departing employees or compromised accounts. Reliable integrations. Secure APIs enable businesses to build robust integrations with partners and offer richer features to their customers. Case Study 4. Open banking and financial services. Open banking initiatives around the world, like PSD2 in Europe, open banking in the UK, or similar movements in Australia, Brazil, and the US, heavily rely on OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect. What it enables? It allows banks to securely share your financial data with your explicit consent with authorized third-party applications. For example, a budget management app could securely connect to all your bank accounts to give you a consolidated view of your finances. How it works? When you connect a budgeting app to your bank, the bank acts as the authorization server and resource server. You are redirected to your bank's secure portal to authenticate and explicitly consent to the data sharing. The bank then issues tokens to the budgeting app, allowing it to request specific data, e.g., transaction history, account balances, with strictly defined scopes. Enhanced security. Often, these financial applications use specialized profiles of OAuth, like FAPI, Financial Grade API, which add even stricter security requirements to ensure the highest level of protection for sensitive financial data. Why it matters to you. Financial control empowers you to use innovative financial tools that can aggregate your data, offer personalized advice, and help you manage your money more effectively. Security by design ensures that sensitive financial data is shared only with your explicit consent and through highly secure, standardized protocols. These examples illustrate that OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect are not just abstract technical specifications. They are the practical, everyday safeguards that underpin our interactions with the digital world, enabling both immense convenience and critical security. They are the invisible engines that make modern, interconnected online services possible. Key takeaways. Sign in with buttons. Google, Facebook, Apple are a prime example of OpenID Connect, offering convenience and security by centralizing authentication and avoiding password sharing. Third-party apps accessing cloud data, photos, documents, demonstrate OAuth 2.0's granular delegated authorization, ensuring specific permissions without full credential access. Enterprise Single Sign-On, SSO, relies on OIDC, streamlining access to internal applications for employees. API security for both consumer-facing and internal services is overwhelmingly handled by OAuth 2.0, including machine-to-machine communication via the client credentials flow. Open banking initiatives leverage OAuth 2.0 and OIDC, often with highly hardened profiles like FAPI, to enable secure data sharing in financial services. These protocols are the foundational components that enable connected, convenient, and secure digital experiences in everyday life and business. The road ahead. Future trends and embracing the decentralized future. We've journeyed from the basics of digital trust to the intricate dance of OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect, examining their core components, security considerations, and pervasive real-world applications. These protocols have revolutionized how we interact with online services, making them more convenient and secure. However, technology never stands still, and the landscape of digital identity and access management continues to evolve. While OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect remain the bedrock of identity and access management for the foreseeable future, new ideas and technologies are emerging. These advancements aim to address lingering challenges, particularly concerning user privacy, data ownership, and the concentration of power among a few large identity providers. Decentralized identity and self-sovereign identity, SSI. Perhaps the most significant and transformative trend on the horizon is decentralized identity, DID, and the broader concept of self-sovereign identity, SSI. The idea, in our current model, your digital identity is largely managed by centralized entities: Google, Facebook, Apple, your bank, your government. While OAuth OIDC helps you leverage these identities, you don't truly own them. If Google decides to close your account, your identity disappears from that domain. SSI proposes a world where individuals have ultimate control over their digital identities and personal data. Instead of relying on a central authority to vouch for who you are, you gather verifiable credentials directly from various issuers and store them securely, often using blockchain technology or distributed ledgers. Verifiable credentials, VCS. These are digital equivalents of physical documents like a driver's license, diploma, or professional certification. A university might issue you a verifiable credential for your degree, cryptographically signed by the university. You store this VC, and when another entity, say, a potential employer, needs to verify your degree, you can present the VC directly to them. The employer can then cryptographically verify the VCS authenticity with the university's public key, without needing to contact the university or your personal data flowing through an intermediary. How it might integrate with complement OAuth OIDC. OAuth and OIDC protocols could potentially be used to authorize access to these decentralized identity wallets or services, managing consent for sharing verifiable credentials. Instead of an identity provider simply asserting your name and email, it could assert that you possess a specific verifiable credential, e.g., this user has a verified professional license issued by XYZ authority. This could lead to a hybrid model, where centralized identity services continue to act as trusted issuers of credentials. But individuals then gain more control over how and when those credentials are presented and verified. While the full realization of SSI is still some years away, the underlying principles of user control, privacy-preserving interactions, and decentralized trust are powerful and could fundamentally alter the digital identity landscape. Evolving standards and specialized profiles. The OAuth and OpenID specifications are not static. They are continuously refined and extended to meet new security challenges and use cases. FAPI, financial-grade API. As seen in open banking, extremely sensitive data like financial information demands even higher levels of security. FAPI is a set of OAuth 2.0 security profiles that impose stricter requirements on implementations, such as enhanced client authentication, stronger token protection, and explicit user consent for individual transactions. This ensures that even if a token is stolen, the damage is heavily mitigated. CIBA, client-initiated back-channel authentication. Imagine authenticating using your smartwatch for an IoT device or from a smart speaker without a visual screen. CIBA allows the authentication process to happen on a separate device, like your phone, that has a rich user interface, while the service that initiated the request, the IoT device, receives the authentication result via a secure backchannel. This extends OAuth OIDC usability to new computing paradigms like the Internet of Things and conversational interfaces. Shared signals and events, OpenID SSE. This specification allows identity providers and other entities to securely and efficiently communicate security and privacy events, like a password change, an account disablement, or a token revocation, to subscribing applications in real time. This can greatly improve security responses by enabling immediate action when critical status changes occur. These specialized profiles and extensions demonstrate the flexibility and adaptability of OAuth 2.0 and OIDC, proving they are capable of evolving to secure an ever-expanding digital ecosystem. The continuous battle for privacy and security. The future of digital trust will always be shaped by the ongoing tug-of-war between convenience, privacy, and security. Privacy by design. Regulations like GDPR and CCPA have pushed organizations to adopt privacy by design principles. This means that privacy considerations are integrated into the architecture of systems from the outset, moving beyond mere compliance to proactive protection of user data. OAuth and OIDC, with their emphasis on granular consent and limited data exposure, naturally align with these principles. User control and transparency. Expect greater emphasis on giving users more dynamic control over their data sharing preferences. Instead of just a one-time, accept decline, users might have dashboards to fine-tune permissions, view access logs, and receive notifications about data usage. Threat evolution. Cyber threats are constantly evolving. As new attack vectors emerge, so too will new security measures and best practices within the OAuth OIDC ecosystem. Staying informed and adopting the latest recommendations will remain crucial. What does this mean for the average user? For the average user, these trends promise more control, the ability to truly own and manage your digital identity rather than just renting it from large platforms. Greater transparency. A clearer understanding of who has access to your data and for what purpose. Enhanced security, continuously evolving safeguards to protect your personal information in an increasingly interconnected world. Wider interoperability, a future where your digital credentials are portable and usable across a broader range of services, fostering innovation and reducing vendor lock-in. Final thoughts. Your role in the trust economy. You, the user, are at the center of this evolving trust economy. Your choices about which services to use, which permissions to grant, and what information to share shape this future. By understanding the underlying mechanisms of OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect, you are not just a passive consumer of digital services, but an informed participant. You can make better decisions about your privacy and security and demand higher standards from the applications and platforms you use. The journey of digital identity is far from over. It is a continuous evolution driven by innovation, security challenges, and the fundamental human desire for control and connection. OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect have laid a powerful foundation. The future, with decentralized identity and ever-smarter security paradigms, promises to build an even more trustworthy and empowering digital world. Key takeaways: the digital identity landscape is evolving, with a growing focus on user privacy and data ownership. Decentralized identity, DID, and self-sovereign identity, SSI, aim to give users ultimate control over their digital identities, often leveraging verifiable credentials and blockchain technology. OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect are adapting through specialized profiles like FAPI for financial services and CIBA for new device types like IoT, and through new protocols like OpenID SSE for real-time security event sharing. The concepts of privacy by design, user control, and transparency will continue to drive innovation in digital identity. Understanding these protocols empowers users to make more informed decisions about their digital security and privacy. The future of digital trust is a continuous journey, building on the strong foundations laid by OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect. Further reading/resources. For those eager to dive deeper into the specifications or explore the latest best practices, consider these resources. IETF Internet Engineering Task Force, publisher of RFC's Request for Comments, for OAuth 2.0, RFC 6749, RFC 7636 for PKCE. Look for the latest OAuth 2.0 security best current practice documents. OpenID Foundation, the official source for OpenID Connect specifications and related profiles. Leading identity management blogs. Many identity providers, e.g., Auth0, Okta, FusionAuth, Ping Identity, maintain excellent blogs with simplified explanations, tutorials, and security advice. NISD Special Publication 800-63-3, Digital Identity Guidelines. Comprehensive guidelines from the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology.